All right, today we're going to dive into a pretty powerful theological idea, the remnant and its mission. Now, it's a term you might have heard in discussions about the end times, but what does it actually mean? In this explainer, we're going to break down who this group is, what their purpose is, and why their mission is considered so absolutely crucial. Let's get into it.
So, let's kick things off with a big question that really frames this whole topic. In a time of widespread crisis, what exactly is a remnant? You know, the word itself kind of makes you think of something left over, maybe a surviving piece of something. But in a theological sense, as we're about to see, it has a much, much deeper and more active meaning.
To really get a handle on the mission, we've got to understand the group itself, right? So this first section is all about defining our terms. We need to establish the fundamental concepts to answer that question. What is the remnant?
Okay, and right off the bat, we need to make a really crucial distinction. The source material draws a clear line between the universal church, which is basically all true believers throughout all of history, and the remnant. The remnant is something more specific. It's a distinct group called out for a unique purpose, especially in the context of the last days.
And here we have it, the core definition. A remnant is a group that's called out during a time of widespread apostasy, which, is just a way of saying a general turning away from faith. What really makes them stand out are two key things. They keep the commandments of God, and they hold on to the faith of Jesus. So their whole identity is built on being faithful when many others aren't.
That whole idea of apostasy, well, that leads us right into our next section. See, it's not enough to just know what the remnant is. We also need to understand why it's needed in the first place. The context for their call is every bit as important as the call itself.
This really begs the question, right? If there's already this universal church made up of all believers, why the need for a separate, specific group to be called out? What's going on in the world that makes this special calling necessary?
Well, the answer, according to the source material, really comes down to timing. The calling of a remnant isn't something that's always happening. It's a specific response to a particular era, the last days, a time of widespread apostasy. We're not just talking about a few people making mistakes here, but a huge society-wide shift away from faith. So, in a way, the remnant is called into existence because the larger community has lost its way.
Okay, so if the whole backdrop is this crisis of faith, what's the remnant actually supposed to do? They're not just supposed to exist, they have a mission. And that mission is all about a very specific three-part proclamation. Let's break down what that is.
And it's really interesting, the symbolism that's used here. The source material connects this mission directly to the image of the three angels you read about in Revelation chapter 14. That biblical connection is there to really hammer home that this message is believed to have a divine origin and that it's super urgent. So here are the three parts of that message laid out for us. First up, they announce that the hour of God's judgment has arrived. That's a call for accountability. Second, they proclaim salvation through Christ. That's the message of incredible hope. And third, they herald the approach of his second coming, which is the ultimate fulfillment of that hope. It's this powerful mix of warning, grace, and promise all rolled into one.
Now, a message this big is obviously going to have some major ripples. So, what are the effects of this proclamation? What's fascinating is how the source describes these impacts happening in two totally different places, one in heaven and one right here on earth.
So, starting on this cosmic level, the source says that this proclamation on earth is happening at the very same time as a work of judgment in heaven. It's like what the remnant is doing and saying down here is directly tied to these huge events happening in the spiritual realm. Their work has this profound heavenly weight to it.
And what's happening up there has a very real, tangible result down here on earth. This message isn't just about sharing information. It's meant to be a catalyst for what's called a work of repentance and reform. The whole point is to spark real, genuine change in people's hearts and lives, a true, real-world transformation. Okay, now all of this can start to sound, well, pretty huge, right? Like some massive historical movement. And it is. But what's so important is how the source material brings this whole giant concept right down to a personal level. This isn't just about a collective. It's about the role of each individual. And this right here, this is probably the most crucial takeaway. The source states, every believer is called to have a personal part in this worldwide witness. That one sentence completely shifts things, doesn't it? It takes the idea of the remnant from being some distant, abstract group and turns it into a present, personal calling. It suggests the responsibility for this mission lands on the shoulders of every single believer.
And that leaves us with this final question, which really gets to the heart of it all.
In a world that is constantly shifting and changing, what does it truly mean to keep the commandments and hold on to your faith, especially when the culture all around you is moving in a different direction? It's a question about conviction, about integrity, and about purpose. And that's definitely something worth thinking about.